What's up, fellow subscribers? Welcome back to the M.I.B. Master Toy Museum. I'll be your curator today. Guys, it's time for another episode of Coffee with M.I.B. And our topic of discussion today is a really what's the word I'm looking for? It could be a controversial topic at times, a fun topic at times, and a very agitating one. Vintage or modern? That's our topic of discussion today. I've had, oh my goodness, over the 30 years of collecting, I've had, thousands of conversations. Do you like vintage more than modern? I've spoken to collectors that will not touch modern action figures. Only vintage. Just recently, I was speaking to a fellow G.I. Joe collector who only collects vintage G.I. Joes. And he asked me if I collected vintage G.I. Joes. And I told him, yes and no. And he said, well, what does that mean? I said, well, yes, I collect vintage G.I. Joes. I just haven't found one that's mint in the box. And he said, those things could go for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And I said, yeah, that's why I don't collect them. I said, if I find one that I actually like, then I'm going to buy it. And I also told him, share it with him. I said, I don't think he quite liked my response, but that's my response. It's irritating at times, but people will say, well, why don't you collect vintage? That's my response. My response is because I'm such a M.I.B. fanatic. It's an illness, guys, that it has to be mint on card. It has to be mint in box. It has to be this way. That's the only way I prefer to collect here at the museum. I am looking for items that are in fantastic condition that I could show and showcase to my subscribers, to viewers, to visitors to the museum. We're looking at two of the oldest action figures that I have in the museum. People want to know, do I collect vintage? Yes, these are LJN the rookie action figures, 8-inch action figures, Mego-like action figures. Let's see. I have to brush up on my Roman numeral, but that's 1973. So these figures they're not mint on card, but they are not bad at all. They're in fantastic condition, but they are on card, sealed on card. I picked this up from one of my favorite toy stores, Big Fun Toy Store, that was going out of business, and they were practically giving everything in the store away. They were having 50 to 60 to 80% off sales on these figures. They're from 1973. They're vintage. Everything about them is absolutely beautiful. And they even have that, to show you the age of them, that old frosting on the boots. But I do collect vintage when the vintage figures suit me. When it suits me, I'll get it. I would never in 100 years purchase these guys if they were not in this condition, if they were not sealed on their cards. Look how old this is. Toy City. Toy City doesn't even exist anymore. Guys, how do you feel about this vintage, modern? Do you collect vintage? Do you collect modern? Are you out of the box collector? Are you in the box or on the card collector? What's your preference? Why? For what reasons? We're down here in the museum. We're having coffee. This is a fantastic discussion. I'm walking around sipping on my coffee, and I said, you know what? Vintage or modern? My preference is both. When it suits me, it has to suit me. It has to make sense to me. I want a museum, and someone said, well, you can have a museum with loose figures too. They're just as historical. They're just as vintage. Yes, and yes again. The only rebuttal I have to that is that I'm trying to, and our mission here, I should say, at the M.I.B. Master Toy Museum, our only mission is to show these toys in their exact condition, the way they would be presented in a toy store, you know, at a shopping center, wherever these toys existed at and sat on the shelves at. That's the element that we're looking for. We want to bring these toys to you the way they actually appeared on toy store shelves. That is the goal that I've set out for with my museum to accomplish. And we've been pretty successful thus far. Yes, we will buy more vintage, like going back to that conversation with the G.I. Joe collector. You know, he made it seem like it's a sin not to have vintage G.I. Joes. And I wanted him to understand that really there's no crime being committed. The sin for me is, and I wanted him truly to understand this, the sin for me is to see a G.I. Joe outside of his box, especially if he's over 50 years old, and not be able to get him in pristine condition, mint in box or mint on card. And that's the illness that I fight with on a daily basis, with my Mego figures, with my G.I. Joe figures, anything that I'm looking for to purchase and add to our museum collection. You know, anything that I'm trying to acquire. We're looking at our boxed window box Batman, Aquaman, and Shazam. These are reproduction figures from Figures Toy Company. They did a fantastic job. And anybody that's grown up in the 1970s remember the window box superheroes, world's greatest superheroes. And Figures Toy Company just came out with a rendition of that. Removable cowl Batman. It's all about what you like, guys. Vintage, modern. I like it all. But just to answer those questions, why I don't have more vintage action figures, it's really because of that. I know a lot of fantastic collectors with some of the most breathtaking collections of Mego figures, G.I. Joes, and the problem that a lot of collectors run into, for one, a lot of this stuff has been played with over the last 40 years. It's very tough, very difficult to find these figures sealed on their cards. You know, sealed in their boxes. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. So if you can find a pristine figure that's loose, that has all of his parts and accessories and all that, everything's in fantastic condition, that's fantastic. That's awesome. It's just not what I enjoy. It's not what I enjoy doing, but I enjoy looking at those collections like that. I think that's fantastic. It still connects you to the historical part of where these toys came from and how these toys are made. Guys, what are your thoughts? And guys, this is, like I said, we're just talking over coffee. This is not taking a shot at anybody or anybody's views or opinions. This is what Coffee Time with M.I.B is all about. This segment of our channel, this is what we do. We want to talk about these topics. Everybody thinks about these topics. I have created a forum now where myself and our subscribers and our viewers can discuss these topics. Vintage, or modern. That's the topic. That's the discussion. Yes, I will be buying more vintage. I will be attending the M.I.B meet in June in Columbus, Ohio. I'll be there. Looking forward to seeing a lot of subscribers and viewers. So if you're at the M.I.B meet, I'll be there. But I'll be there to search for some vintage M.I.B figures in the box, on their card. And to have a bunch of fun. And that's what it's all about, guys. It's all about having fun. It's really about what you enjoy collecting. And to me, it irks me sometimes when I have collectors come up to me and that's the first thing out of their mouth. How come you don't collect vintage? It's not because I don't want to collect vintage. I'm looking to collect carded, boxed, vintage figures. That's the goal. And ultimately, naturally, guys, the things I enjoy collecting. But it has to be a certain way. It has to be in a certain condition. It kills me to see a vintage figure, M.I.B figure, outside of his card, out of his box. It kills me. It's an illness, guys. It's an illness that I deal with. One of my collecting buddies said, "Man, you just crazy." You just crazy. He's like, and I told him, I said, yeah, if I had to have a collection of vintage figures, my museum collection would be extremely small because we all know that these vintage M.I.B figures cost a lot of money. Mint in package, mint on card. They cost a lot of money. So, I would have a very small collection. But we will be adding more vintage figures for our vintage collectors and subscribers to our channel. Yes, we will be adding more vintage figures to our museum collection. But that's to really answer and quell those those thoughts or questions. How come the M.I.B. Master Toy Museum doesn't have a ton of vintage figures, or do we enjoy collecting vintage figures? Yes, I enjoy collecting them. I enjoy owning them, acquiring them. Just has to be the right fit for us, financially, all of that, condition wise. We saw an opportunity to buy these two rookie 1973 rookie carded figures, LJN figures, and we jumped on it. We took advantage of a fantastic deal. If this toy store was not going out of sale, out of business, I doubt if we would have made the purchases on these figures. These figures were extremely expensive. They were listed, you know, in this toy store. And there was just too many other things in that toy store that I wanted. But, you know, at 80% off, you know, we couldn't pass that up. Vintage or modern? That's the question. Vintage or modern? We'll leave you with that, guys. Just on my mind, I'm having some coffee. Wanted to invite you guys in for a cup of coffee here at the museum and really talk shop, talk about the vintage and modern situation with your collecting. Which do you prefer? Let us know, guys, in the comment section right underneath this video. You know the routine, guys. God bless. And keep collecting.